Okay, so now we just did the crooners of the 1940s and 50s, and now we see we've got some overlap here with rock and roll. On slide 34, we've got Elvis Presley with Heartbreak Hotel, and then we have Buddy Holly here with his hit Peggy Sue. Unfortunately, when the rock and roll stars started traveling to lots of different cities to perform because they were a huge hit, and they had to make the tour of the United States to uh, perform for all of their fans. Um, they started out using buses, and then they moved to airplanes. And unfortunately, we had a lot of airplane crashes, and we lost a lot of really wonderful musicians in airplane crashes. Buddy Holly was one of them. I think Philip and I had mentioned a couple in class who had died in the Big Bopper, and some others. And then if you get right into not too terribly long ago, maybe 20 years ago, Ricky Nelson died in an airplane crash. Always fighting the bad weather to get to play on a New Year's Eve or a Christmas Eve or some place where the weather was bad, and unfortunately we lost them that way. Um, but they knew that was a risk. And then the Beatles hit. And I think just looking at these photos, you can see the personal transformations that these fellas went through. Now, what we were seeing in them and what they really were, of course, were two different things. They were performers. So we see the upper left photo. That's how they looked to us when they came here across the pond in 1964. They had already been extremely popular in England since 62. They were playing the nightclubs of Berlin and Hamburg and some other cities. And they started the what is called the British invasion. And so please remember that term, British invasion. It started with the Beatles. And then you've got the upper right, where they moved to, they were always dressed not only alike, but in the finest. Right at that time, England was the tops in fashion, teen and young adult fashion, coming from Carnaby Street. I've been there. It's fantastic. If you ever get a chance to go to London, you will love it. You will love it. A lot of people say it's their favorite city. It happens to be mine. So you see the Beatles in the upper right. They went to those collars, and what you begin to see in fashion is that everybody started dressing like the Beatles. They started dressing like the people they idolized. And then if you look at the lower left, this was their look during Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Um, they started to be influenced by Eastern Indian religion, philosophy. They went and started working on themselves. Um, the only married Beatle when we first met them was John Lennon, and he, not too long into this, divorced her and married Yoko Ono. I don't. It looked like a really hot love affair. I'm not too sure Yoko Ono was as happy in that relationship as John Lennon was. I understand he was kind of flippant with women and perhaps abusive. At any rate, he was a genius. You know, what can I say about talents, creative geniuses? They have their quirks. I'm not going to call spousal abuse a quirk. but I am saying that there is something about either art or musical or writing genius that comes out of people who are lacking in some other sense. And uh, he had issues. Unfortunately, John Lennon was assassinated in 1980. Was a huge loss to the world. His music, his writing partner was Paul McCartney, and although Paul McCartney is probably every bit as productive over the years as John Lennon, there is something about John Lennon's music that was almost otherworldly. And I urge all of you to listen to some of the Beatles' music and start from 1964. Start with I Want to Hold Her Hand, I Saw Her Standing There, and then go into the music, their music of the late 60s. They broke up in 1970, so they were just together for about 8 years and made all that music. This is so amazing to me. So then we see the lower left, Sergeant Pepper's. Then we've got 4 individuals here now. I don't know what year that picture was taken, but John Lennon grew a long beard. Paul McCartney was the only one who really didn't get into a whole lot of facial hair thing. But the rest of them they were influenced by mysticism, and it didn't hurt their music. It just made it very different. And then, of course, I can't not say this. The influence of drugs, LSD in particular. A lot of people say that's what started their Sgt. Pepper's period. But a lot of people made a heck of a lot of great music under the influence of LSD. What can I say? I don't know how it works. I know that sometimes you have hallucinations. I know it's not good to use it. I'm not telling you to use it to be more creative. But they did other stuff too, and I'm definitely not in favor of the use of drugs for recreational purposes. Definitely not. But you can't deny the music that came out of them. You just can't deny it. Then as we move on to slide, what is that, 26? No, I'm sorry, 36. We're moving along. This is a 50 slide lesson. So anyway, so we move on to another kind of way to play, quote, records. We sort of got rid of records and we went into cassette tapes, which had the reel-to-reel, as you can see there. Then we went into digital recording, which led the way to what you're all familiar with today. Digital audio began in the telephone industry, where it was used to digitize telephone conversations. We probably have not been aware of that, and in effect, compress them so that more conversations could be handled on existing lines. So it made it cheaper for the industry to produce the kind of lines that we needed to carry our many conversations, because at this point we were talking on the phone a lot. Not phones that we could carry around with us, but landlines, shall I say. Then we move on to slide 38 when we get a little bit more into digital recording. This was being manipulated in the music industry probably more than anything. We've got Hitoru Nakajima. He joined Sony. Sony was huge in the sound industry. He was struck with the idea of digitizing sound when trying to improve the sound quality of FM broadcasts. Ooh, does that ring a bell? AM and FM. Okay. So he was trying to improve FM, even though FM was better than AM. So Nakajima thought that by using digital technology, which had only been used in computers and long distance telephone transmission, the quality of recorded sound could be improved. So, you know, here are people over here looking at telephones and records, and he's looking at the actual quality of the sound and how can we make that better. Remember, we're never satisfied with what we have. We're always looking to make something better, something to more sufficiently and efficiently um, uh, what's the word, satisfy our needs. Okay, all right, we're going to stop this one right here.